Hi, welcome back to part 2 of this elemental deep dive. Number 2. So, quick review, right? I think everyone's had, the few of you out there have had time to maybe process these shapes, right? Hexagons. And we look at, right, we're going to build some elements. We've built hydrogen, helium, and lithium, and that's where we left off. So I've do a quick review. All the shapes now, 1, 2, 3, and the next one is 4. See, all look very similar, right? They're all kind of hexagons. But in hydrogen, right, it started to self-organize, right? A crystalline, but it started to kind of build out this way. Right. And kept going. Right. In helium, right, we brought 2 dielectric lines of force, and it kind of did the same thing, right? But, right, and this is just called like a simple hexagon, right? Hydrogen. Right, and this got a little more complex as we started to now almost like make container. If you just imagine these like slices of cheese or cake, right? Kind of like this going this way, but these are now looked at as spheres, right? Getting into that lattice, right? So spheres, we're grouping them into spheres, and this is called hexagonal close pack. Right, you can go process that concept of a hexagonal close, and this helium, right? So you said, well, hydrogen, helium, lithium, right? We covered that's called a body face cubit, right? C-U-B-I-C, body faced cubic. But I guess it is a hexagon, right? If you think about it, this body face cubic in 3 dimensions, right? It is a cubic. And then you got to imagine now there's a point in the center where kind of everything is, you know, hooking into all these, right? Because these are pyramids, 4-sided pyramids. And they all kind of one at the top, right? So there's 6 of those. So that's the body face cubic. You can see kind of still a hexagon, but it's turned into a cube, and then there's another point in the center, right? Maybe that's better, right? There's a point in the center that all of these are trying to connect to, right? Creating this 6 pyramids, right? So then we go, okay, cool. That's really neat. We've turned a hexagon into a cube in 3 dimensions, right? This closely packed helium is in 3 dimensions, and then this simple hexagon is in this dimension. And this is one of the coolest ones. This is beryllium. What is it? I don't care. But what it does, when you put a bunch of them into existence here, drawing in 4 dielectric lines of force, because beryllium is 4s, right? Right, you get this. Oh, and they do the dance, right? And they start to, look at that. And again, they self-organize, just like this one above it, right? Same idea. Hexagonal close pack. Yep, that's right. Beryllium, right? Hexagonal close pack. So this is hexagonal close pack. This, even though it's these pyramids that are kind of folding in, you know, like this, you know, it kind of looks like a hexagon, but it's not, right? It's a BFD, body face cubic, but still cool. Beryllium, another hexagonal close pack. So that's the same kind of symbol here. Right? Hexagonal close pack. You get the point, right? So now we're just gonna go off the deep end here, because this one kind of changes some stuff around, but everyone understand, right? This idea of hexagons. So hexagons are like, that's the structure of the universe. When you're talking about the ether, right? Bees, right? Check this out. Not to digress too far. When I found this out in the yard, this is a huge paper wasp, or a bald-faced wasp, right? This is their nest. This was sitting in tall grass. It wasn't even hooked to anything. It was just sitting up in tall grass, you know? But you start to dive into this thing and you go, how do the bees know, right? These are like wasps or hornets, or we also have some bumblebees, some honeybees, and you can see, right? They're finding these dielectric lines of force. They can see them. And then they just kind of build phylosaxis, right? They just kind of spiral, and you can see the angle as they start to just change direction, right? Cool, right? Paper wasp. Don't let them sting you, though. Ooh. They're vicious, and they do multiple stings. Anyway. So let's talk about the next one, right? Talking about going off the deep end is boron, right? And we know this is phive. Boron. What does boron make? Boron gets a little weird, right? Instead of these cubics where we've got a 90-degree angle, right, like this, in the case of this phive dielectric lines of force into existence, right? What's boron? I don't know. I don't really care. Just kidding. Right? Now we have this like acute angle. And so because of that, we end up having like this diamond shape, right? And then if you try to draw it in 3 dimensions, right, everything has to kind of have this weird, so I won't do it justice, but go look up, it's called a rhombohedral, right? Rhombohedral. What's interesting about this one, again, this, I won't get too much into this one, but what's interesting about it is that this makes up the other family, they're trigonal and hexagonal, right? These are the 2 types of crystal lattice families. So this makes up the other, right? This is a whole, go Google the rhombohedral, right? That's a cool one. I'm not going to get too much into that one, though, right? Move on to the next one, carbon, right? So we know that this is a rhombo, right? Or a diamond, right? So let's talk about the next one, which is carbon, right? We'll just leave it at carbon, right? Right, we might go 7 and 8, which is nitrogen and oxygen, right? Maybe we'll look at those briefly, but let's just talk about carbon. So according to this calendar, it talks about, if we look at carbon, and just what it says briefly, it says the carbon is the most important element of life, period. Like, that's a statement, right? That's a heck of a statement, right? So we're carbon-based life forms, right? We all know, we're carbon-based life forms, and we exist here on Earth, right? We could even say that 666 may be the hex, the hex of Earth, right? It's all hexagonal, right? This is the hex of being on Earth. So let's talk about carbon. So we bring carbon into existence, but there's kind of 2, right? There's a diamond, and then there's like graphite. So if you just look at graphite, and you bring a bunch of 6, right, dielectric lines of force into existence, you guessed it, those 6 dielectric lines of force terminate from counter space into space, and they make, again, these simple hexagons. Just like hydrogen, right? It's not a close pack. It's just a simple hexagon. Unless you get into diamonds, right? Diamonds look kind of similar, I guess, to this body-faced concept but it's called I don't get too much into it, but it's called a face-centered diamond cubic. Face-centered diamond cubic. That's what, so after a lot of pressure on this carbon, right, it turns into a diamond. I won't draw that. It's just a cube with some cool angles in it. But anyway, so this is carbon, right? So you see, wow. Again, this looks kind of like a cube, depending on how you look at it now with these 3 dimensions. We could build it out this way as we start to chain, these carbons together, whatever. And then you go, oh, cool, this is our whole universe, right? These are the first 6 elements. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We can see it starts out as a hexagon, and then it kind of closely packs those, right? And then we have a hexagon, but it takes another shape and creates this body-faced cubic, right? Beryllium, right? Just like helium, more closely packed. The rhombo, go look at the rhombo. I don't even know what boron. It's boring. I'm just kidding. I love you, boron. And then, of course, carbon, 666. So if we were just to speculate now, well, we tricked you. We'll go 2 more instead of just the first 6. Let's just look at these, right? We got a few minutes. So 777 are trip 7s, right? 777, but we got rid of this idea of electron. I mean it too. There really is no electrons. I mean, marbles, right? So nitrogen. And then 8 is oxygen. So let's ignore nitrogen. It's cool. Let's ignore it. Let's look at oxygen. Right? Oxygen, when we put them in, right, we got to get the fishbowl out now because this stuff's floating around when we make oxygen. 8 dielectric lines of force. And it makes yeah, you guessed it, a simple cube, right? Just a simple cube, right? Just a simple cube. Well, that's cool. There's no like fancy stuff going on inside the cube. There's no weird angles. It just makes a cube. And so then you start thinking, hey, I got it. Let's see if we can combine some of these things and see if they all self-organize into a something, right? So you get your bowl out. You go, I'm going to bring oxygen, and I'm going to bring one of these hydrogens. I got tons of these hydrogens around, right? So I'm going to bring in 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We're going to bring in our cube of oxygen, and then we're gonna throw in a couple hydrogens, right? So we throw 2 single dielectric lines of force, and what do you know? They hook on to this cube, like they're like, hey, check it out. Poop, splat, water. You're like, holy cow. So if I take 2, right, H2O, dihydrous oxide, if we take 2 of these hydrogens we made a crap ton of them, and I hook it to just 1 oxygen, it makes water. This is great. So let's look at hydrogen is probably the most flammable, right? Flammable thing, right? You can light up hydrogen, whoosh, right? We want hydrogen cars and all these things. Watch out. Stuff's super lightweight, and it's super volatile, right? And then we take oxygen, which is this highly reactive gas or whatever, and we hook it, and we make something that's so inert, it puts out fire, right? And you can't, right? You can fracture that water back into its hydrogens and its oxygens. Be careful with that. But you can absolutely do it. Isn't that cool, though? We made water, right? So we go, let's do one more. I like this hydrogen. I do have a lot of it. So what else can I do with this oxygen? So get your fishbowl out. You bring in a carbon. You go, this hydrogen is great, but it's so lightweight, it just floats away. So you pump a bunch of these. But first you put in this piece of carbon. You go, I'm going to put this one piece of carbon, which I know turns into this, right? So I've got carbon. And now I'm going to bring in some hydrogens. And holy cow, look at this. They all kind of hook on. Ching, 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 like this. So you've got hydrogens. And a carbon. It's a hydrocarbon. Right? Now you can burn it. Right? This is like fuel, petrol. Right? This is the idea of the hydrocarbon, right? We've just basically, carbon was this cool molecule that made hexagons, and then we took something else that made hexagons and sent those all in together, and they all self-organized into hydrocarbons, right? So anyway, keep going through the periodic table. I can show you, I'm going to fast forward in the next video to a discovery I made with element number 60 on the periodic table of elements, and some photographs that I took of what I believe these dielectric lines of force, right? So we'll see you next time.